Yesterday, I had a founder reach out with a very interesting question, and it's a question we get often. It was along the lines of what kind of objections are you seeing from early stage investors and VCs when a company is trying to raise money? It doesn't have an in-house development team. So this is a team that might be outsourced. To give you a little bit of context, we are a venture studio. We help non-technical domain expert founders build tech businesses. Our portfolio companies have raised money from some of the top tier early stage investors around the world, including Y Combinator, Google, Cartier, and so on. The question was that these VCs have historically been very anti-outsourced development and anti-investment in any company that does not have an in-house CTO or tech team. And while that's true, our portfolio companies have still managed to successfully raise money from many of these early stage investors. So let's dive into what's actually happening there, how it's possible to raise money, and the mindset behind this kind of thought process. To start with, let's talk about why YC and these other VCs are generally discouraging of having an outsourced development agency as your primary resource for tech development. The main reason behind that is the philosophy of building a successful startup. And the idea there is that the most successful companies are able to go through the build, measure, learn loop as quickly as possible. So the higher the number of iterations you have of that build, measure, and learn loop, the much more likely the chances of success of that company. And the build, measure, learn loop is simply you launch a business, you go to market, you see what your customers are saying, and then based on that feedback, you iterate and you launch the next version of that product. The faster a company goes through that process generally tends to equate to a higher probability of success for that business. Now, what does that mean in the context of a typical development agency? There are two main problems with that. Problem number one is that because the offshore agency or its outsourced development, there's a blocker associated with scoping and pricing. So every time you get feedback, you want to add something new, you generally have to go through a negotiation cycle with a typical development agency where you scope out the thing, you understand what's it going to cost, they give you a quote, you negotiate the price, and then once that's done, you are able to start development, or the engineers are starting development, those new sets of features or changes. Usually there are also conflicts about what's considered in scope and out of scope, and all of that really just eats up a lot of the founder's time and energy without really adding a lot of value to the business. That's problem number one. Problem number two is development agencies typically have shared resources. So when you have an engineer working on your product, you might get typically like a low price point development agency, but what they're doing behind the scenes is that that same engineer is spending half their day on another product. When speed is critical to doing those build, measure, learn iterations, just not able to execute as fast because the amount of hours aren't being dedicated to your product just because of their business model. Ultimately, that results in a lower number of iterations of that cycle and a reduced impact on your business. So those are the main issues and the main reasons why most venture capital firms discourage using outsourced dev agencies to build tech and generally avoid investing in companies like that. In our case at Byldd, we're specifically built to help early stage founders go through that build, measure, learn loop as quickly as possible and as often as possible. We're able to do this in two main ways, right? So one is to ensure that all the engineers are working exclusively on that product. So we don't share resources, specifically engineering resources across different projects. The engineers effectively act as an in-house team. They work exclusively for that product and they work only on that product. This allows the founders to change directions at a moment's notice. So if a founder receives feedback from the market or sees an opportunity that they want to take advantage of, they can change direction or prioritize something new at a moment's notice, and then the engineers will execute on that exactly like they would if they were an in-house team. The second is that our pricing model is structured in a way that there is no consequence of changing direction or changing scope whatsoever. The founder is able to treat the Byldd team as an in-house team and basically do whatever they want that makes sense for their business. That's really the main reason that our portfolio companies have been able to successfully raise money from these VCs, because they've been able to demonstrate that they are able to effectively go through that build, measure, learn cycle really quickly with a team like ours. If those two main issues are addressed, generally VCs are much more open to investing in companies that have offshore talent. Although, of course, it does help to have a little bit of technical talent in-house so that you can speak that language and have those conversations, but it's in no way a deal breaker from being able to raise money and scale your business up. In our next video, we're going to talk about what VCs are actually looking for when they're investing in early stage companies, and I'm going to walk you through some of the products that we've built that have raised money, and generally like the kind of traction and stuff that VCs are thinking about when they're looking to invest in early stage founders.